So this morning, I want to talk about intention. And wait a minute, let me get my screen going here. And I want to talk about intention as an alternative to living our lives on autopilot, what Tara Brach calls living in a trance. And this practice of living with intention, we just sort of talk about it in passing here a lot, but it's really one of the most profound ways of leading a mindful, purposeful, and fulfilling life. It calls us to move beyond this autopilot existence that so often governs our day-to-day lives. And instead, it invites us to align our actions, our thoughts, and our words with our deepest values and aspirations. And from a Buddhist perspective, living with intention is not just setting goals or striving, having aspirations, striving for personal success. It's about cultivating a way of being that is rooted in awareness, compassion, and a deep connection to the present moment. In Buddhism, intention, known as satthana in Pali, plays a central role in shaping our actions and ultimately our karma. The Buddha taught that it's not just the action itself that determines its ethical weight, but the intention behind it. In other words, we could do an action which appears ethical, but if our intention is not skillful, it's just not gonna make it. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha states, quote, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts." Again, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. And this teaching emphasizes how our inner motivations shape not only our external actions, but also our character and the quality of our lives. Living with intention, then, begins with necessarily deep self-awareness. It requires us to examine the motives behind our actions, not just to act, but to really clarify our motives. That's where the ethical piece comes in. To ask ourselves whether our actions are rooted in wholesome qualities, such as kindness and generosity and wisdom, or in unwholesome qualities, ego-based qualities, such as greed, hatred, and delusion, the three poisons. And this is where the process of discernment comes in, to really take a close, careful look at the underlying intention. By skillfully fostering our intentions, we create conditions for a life that is more harmonious, more meaningful, and really aligned with this path that we're on. And of course, mindfulness, sati, is the foundation of intentional living. Without mindfulness, we just are prone to act on habitual impulses. We just go with these conditioned patterns, and we're just swept up in the distractions of everyday life. But when we cultivate our mindfulness, we develop this ability to pause. We talked about this last night in book group. Pause, notice, reflect, and act with awareness rather than reacting unconsciously to our circumstances, just shooting from the hip. For example, when faced with conflict, a mindful and intentional response might involve taking a moment to pause, to breathe, and reflect on how we can approach the situation, not with reactive conflict, but with compassion and understanding. It really helps us dial down the temperature. And so we can react rather than just reacting with anger or defensiveness. Mindful awareness allows us to connect, or reconnect, I should say, with our intentions in the midst of challenging situations. And it thereby ensures that our actions are guided by wisdom rather than reactivity. Reactivity is usually born of the ego. It's usually the thing that comes out of our habitual habits and conditions, and it very often creates suffering. And of course, the Eightfold Path is the framework for living with intention. For instance, right intention, the second of the Eightfold Path, involves cultivating thoughts and emotions that are free from ill will, cruelty, and attachment. Instead, it encourages us to act with loving kindness, with renunciation, and with harmlessness, not doing harm. And when we do this, we create a life that supports not only our own well-being, but the well-being of others and those around us and those with whom we're in relationship. But living with intention also aligns with the other aspects of the Eightfold Path, such as right speech, right action, right livelihood. It's just woven throughout the Eightfold Path is this notion of setting intentions and living with intentions. So similarly, if we're going to live ethically, we have to ensure that our speech and actions reflect honesty, kindness, and integrity. And similarly, if our intention is to live a life of simplicity and contentment without always clinging, grasping, doing the things we've talked about in the last several weeks, we have to examine whether our choices, our livelihood and lifestyle choices, support this aspiration. We have to do that inventory. Intentional living is not solely an individual pursuit. It is deeply interconnected with the well-being of others. And this is because compassion and wisdom are seen as the two wings of our awakening. They are essential. They have to be present to live with intention. Because compassion reminds us that our actions have an impact on those around us, and compassion reminds us and encourages us to act in ways that not only alleviate our own suffering, but promote harmony and alleviate the suffering of those with whom we come in contact. Wisdom helps us to see the impermanent and interdependent nature of all things, and it frees us from clinging and allowing us to act with clarity and equanimity. For example, when making decisions about how to spend our time, we might ask ourselves, does this choice reflect my values, or is this some kind of avoidance, escape, mindless autopilot activity? Does this activity contribute to our well-being and the well-being of others? Does it align with our understanding that all things are impermanent, all things are interconnected? These are the questions. This is the self-inquiry that guide us toward actions that are both intentional and infused with wisdom. So living with intention transforms the way we experience life. When we act with intention, even the simplest activities, eating, walking, speaking, these become opportunities to practice our mindfulness, to engage in self-discovery, because we begin to see life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a continuous flow of moments in which we choose how to respond. That's the whole point of setting and living with intention. This awareness brings with it a sense of purpose and fulfillment. We recognize that every moment offers us a chance to act in alignment with our highest aspirations. And additionally, living with intention helps us navigate the uncertainties of life and do so with greater resilience and greater inner peace. When we are clear about our values and clear about our intentions, we are less likely to be swayed by momentary and external circumstances. We're less likely to be swayed by the opinions or pressure from others. We hold our ground. We remain steady, knowing that our actions are guided by an inner sense of purpose rather than just fleeting momentary desires, fears, avoidance, people-pleasing, whatever. Living with intention is both a practice and it is also a way of life, because it asks us to cultivate mindfulness, to examine our motives, and to align our actions with our deepest values. So from a Buddhist perspective, intentional living is not about striving for perfection. It's not about seeking external success. It is about walking the path of wisdom and compassion moment to moment with an open heart and a clear mind. And the The promise there is of greater freedom and greater peace in our lives. And because living with intention is an act of liberation, it frees us from the grip of these unconscious habits, from this reactivity, from this trance that Tara Brach talks about, and allows us to live with greater authenticity, greater joy, and greater connection. And also, importantly, with greater spaciousness that we so often talk about. As the Buddha reminds us, with our thoughts we make the world. With our thoughts we make the world. By living with intention, we can create a world and a life that reflects the qualities of love and wisdom and peace. Living with intention.